Welcome to our first modeling tip. So this is what we're trying to create today. It's a little bit of an animation, but also hard surface modeling. So I do hope you enjoy this. Let's start with a new general file. So with this file, we can add a cylinder. Let's press Shift A to add a cylinder. So with this cylinder, what we can do is we can turn down the vertices. We don't want too many vertices. That's a thing. So we want approximately 16 vertices. This is ideal. Let's move this up. So if we press GZ, we can move this up. And what we'd like to do is to duplicate this. If we duplicate it, we can press X and we can move it along the X-axis. Let's just move it next to it. With the original cylinder, we'd like to rotate this. If we press R and X, we can then enter 9, 0 and rotate it on the X-axis. And then with the second cylinder, what we can do is scale this down. If I press S, you can scale it down the normal way. But then if I press Shift Z, then you can scale it down like this. Now, this is better for what we're trying to create. We don't want to scale it up. We don't want to scale it down too small. We want to get it somewhere where it's not as big as the original, something like that. And then if I press 7 on my number pad, then I can press GX and move it a little bit closer to my original cylinder. Now this is ideal. For what we're about to do next, I would like you to go up at the top of Blender. You see this snapping option right here. It says snapping. Let's click on that and let's change it from increments to vertices. And then we'd like to press this magnet button. Now what this allows us to do, it's just as it sounds. It helps you to snap objects together by having a magnetic pull, I believe. That's probably a terrible way to explain this, but it's the one I'm going with today. So obviously I've pressed 7 on my number pad. I'm viewing this from the top down view. If I press tab in, here's what we're able to do. We can now create loop cuts. And when we create loop cuts, we would like to have them as close as possible to our vertices on the second objects. So now if I press Ctrl R, I can now have my edge loops. Now if you right click, then you can see it gives us the option to snap them to the vertices on the second object. You can get this option by pressing Control, obviously, if you want to disable it. But I would like to keep this option. So we're going to go ahead and snap it to the first vertice. And we're just going to continue that essentially. Just keep on snapping them. Keep creating your loop cuts and snapping them to these vertices. So that's that. That's looking good already. I promise you this is going to look a lot better when we're finished. Now we can tab out of our first object. Click on the second object and tab back in. Now we can do the same thing with the original object. Let's press 1 on our number pad, Control R to get our loop cuts, and then we can snap them to this object. Literally just the same. So let's just continue snapping these to our vertices on the other side, on the other object. This is just an easy way to get this done, but you can imagine how you could apply this principle to other things that you're doing in your workspace, whatever project that you're working on. I'm pretty sure sometimes you can find a useful case for skills like this, and just knowing a few tricks, just knowing Blender, it's good to have a few tricks up your sleeves. So now that we have both objects, we've got our loop cuts added, let's click on both objects. You can highlight them just like this, and then let's press Ctrl J to join both objects. Now if we tab in, we tab into both objects. Second, let's press 7 on our number pads to go to the top-down view. So from the top once again, this is how we'd like to work. It's a nice way to work from the top. Let's press Option Z and then number 1 on our number pad. And here's what we get to do. We get to highlight these vertices. Now once we got everything highlighted with both of them, then we can press Ctrl E. Now this gives us a lot of different options: extrude edges, bezel edges, or bridge edge loops. This is the option we want, bridge edge loops. Let's press that. Let's see what we get. This is what we get. How does it look? Probably looks like a mess from your perspective, but let's continue to see if we can continue to improve it. So if we're looking at it from this perspective, we want to add an edge loop in between right there, and then add an additional 2 edge loops right in the center. And at this point, we can probably turn off our magnets. We don't want it interfering with too much of what we've got going on. Now, if I press 7 on my number pad, we want to add additional edge loops along the sides, kind of like this. If I add 2 of those, then I can press S, Y, and scale them along the Y-axis, something similar to that. And I want to do the same on the other side, 2 edge loops, and then S, Y, and we can scale them along the Y-axis. Now with the top-down face, what are we going to do with this thing? From the top, we can view this in the X-ray mode, and we can select both of these two faces. Then we can press I to insert, and I once again to insert a little bit more. Control E, and then we can bridge edge loops. Now, once we've got that done, look at this. It's coming together, as you can see. Then we can press Control R, and we can add plenty of edge loops in between right there. Now, believe it or not, we do want to do it with the other cylinder. So with the original cylinder instead. So if we press number 1 on our number pad, let's go back into our X-ray mode, but we do need face select for that. Press number 3, face select, both faces selected. Press I to insert once, I once again to insert. So once you've got those done, then you can press Control E once again and bridge edge loops. Then you can add some loop cuts in between with equal spacing. Then from that, you can simply press Control 4 and it subdivides everything and it makes it look really nice like this. You could press Control Z to undo that and press Control 5 to subdivide that by 5. Either way, the numbers you subdivide this by all depends on how smooth it turns out to be. So I could undo it, subdivide it by 2, and you can see it's still a little bit rough. I could press right click on my mouse pad, shade smooth, and this is what it looks like. So even this circle, if we wanted to, if we wanted to make it look a little bit sharper, we could then tab in, Control R, and get a little loop cut right there and bring this up. You see how edgy that looks? That looks a lot sharper. So if you wanted to do the same thing with the other edges, then it's all possible. Just add an edge loop and you can get it to be as sharp as you like. It all comes down to your preference. Even with the one below, you can add an edge loop on the outer area. You can get that to look pretty sharp as well. You can add one inwards as well, get that to look pretty good also. So considering from where we start from, this actually looks fairly good. Now, if you wanted to continue modeling this, you could take one of these edge loops, you could duplicate it. You could then separate it as I'm doing. You could then tab back in, A to select all and F to add a face. And from there, you can extrude this and quickly before you know it, then you can just add some more loop cut essentially. And you can separate these loop cuts, you can edge them out, you can space them out. Press SZ and space out these loop cuts to the absolute limitation. Then once again, from the top-down view, you can select both of these faces. So if you press 3, select both of these faces, you can then insert these faces once again. And overall, that'll look pretty damn cool. You can make a quick animation of this, in fact, if you'd like, This is something that is quite normal for a lot of engineers to do when they're designing. So if we wanted to, we could actually we could go down to our keyframes at the bottom. We could add a keyframe right there. Now, if we go to 60 frames, we could then press GZ, drop that down, and add another keyframe. And there you go. It's animated. That's how simple it is to animate. From 0 frames, you can press the space bar and have it animated. Yeah, congratulations. You just made a simple animation and you made a pretty cool model. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in our next video. Remember to subscribe for more videos like this. Remember to leave a like and to leave a comment. If you have any questions, if you see any mistakes that I need to fix, feel free to let me know.